Gentlemen, I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. It is almost Christmas. Boy, has 2025 flown by a lot faster than I expected it would. I like to try and create a video once every 2 months or so if I can. And I caught some time today in between meetings. I was in between phone calls. I was listening to the regular guy firearms channel on YouTube. If you haven't ever listened or watched any of his content, I highly recommend it. He seems to run a very tight ship with his school of firearms instruction. He's got a lot of really good content out there. If you're like a serious shooter or you're serious about self-defense or anything really in the shooting space, if it's a big hobby of yours and you're passionate about it, he's a great channel to follow. So I highly recommend going over there and checking out his channel. Well, I was watching one of his videos and it was a quick short. It was like maybe 30 seconds long, and he was talking about kind of as a United States citizen, your primary weapon really is your concealed handgun. And so that got me thinking a little bit. Like, I knew that intuitively because that's what I carry every day is, a handgun. But, guys like me, guys like you, we have rifles and other things like that. And those are all really important. But the owning rifle and kit always seems to be kind of like the sexier thing that new shooters always want to buy. And it got me thinking, if your handgun is the primary weapon system and you should train and be good at it, which again, those of us that carry every day kind of intuitively understand, how often do guys like us get questions from people that don't shoot as often or maybe don't even own a firearm? They start asking questions like, hey, should I get an AR-15? Should I get a plate carrier? Should I get all this? Should I buy all these magazines? And the answer is yes, but when, right? Like, what's your priority of things that you need to purchase and train with and be good? And the more I think about it, the more I hear the regular guy firearms trainer in the back of my head saying like, hey, your handgun is your primary. Well, if that's the case, I just wanted to share my opinion on kind of like an order of operations or an order of priority of different kit that you should purchase and train with before you move on to something a little bit more niche. Like, so something like a fighting rifle is significantly less applicable to everyday self-defense than, for most people, than a concealed handgun. So you shouldn't really be going and buying a rifle. You're welcome to do whatever you want. Like, this is America, but if you're wanting to be prudent with your financials and just think logically with your tools like firearms and preparedness equipment, you should probably start with the order of priority and go down the list, right? And then your budget determines how much you can spend and how fast you can get down this list of purchases and training. So I think that the first thing you should buy is a concealed handgun, and more specifically, I've said this in a previous video, a striker fired 9mm, and the compact size is my favorite. If you got really big hands, maybe you can justify having a full-size handgun. Avoid buying subcompacts as your first carry gun. Maybe some people will get upset that I'm saying that, but let me explain my logic. Because I like subcompacts. I carry actually a Smith & Wesson M&P Bodyguard 2.0 pretty often. I love that little 380, but if that was the only handgun that I carried all the time, I would be doing myself a disservice. So buy a Glock 19 size firearm, a Glock 45, an M&P Compact 2.0. If you're into other brands, there are some good ones out there. I don't even really want to go down that rabbit hole, because when you're talking about your first carry pistol, you really want to stay in the vein of the most common and dependable pistols that are easily customizable and upgraded. And you can always buy a different pistol later if you want, that maybe floats your boat, that you like the grip better. So in general, I like to say Glock 19, Glock 45, M&P series, compact are really the three I stick with. Anything outside of that, maybe somebody can convince me. I'm always open to that kind of debate, but you can't go wrong with those three pistols in particular. Get yourself a concealed carry rig that is worth its weight, and those are usually not cheap, so you can expect to spend between $100 and $200 for a really quality inside the waistband holster. I like the sidecar design so that you can either have a tourniquet with you next to your pistol or an extra magazine. I recommend T-Rex Arms or Tier 1 Concealed. There are some other holster manufacturers out there that are fine. Just do your research on that, and really honestly maybe kind of go with what someone who's a better shooter than you would suggest and try it out, and then kind of grow from there, because everybody is a little bit different in their body shape and their preferences and their use cases. But I can tell you this, if you learn from the basics of gear that you should be using and how you should train from a guy that is a competent shooter that shoots all the time, that carries every day, you're at least, you know, you're starting in a spot that is functional for someone else. It's probably going to be pretty functional for you. Again, you can grow out of it and have your own preferences from there. The second thing is we talk about training. I don't think this is talked about enough. It made a huge impact in my life. If you buy the concealed handgun, buy your extra magazines, you've got your holster, get your optic on it. I don't think we should be carrying iron sights pistols unless there's some sort of exception. Maybe your eyesight can't handle it because you have an astigmatism or whatever. In general, a pistol dot is always better than having irons. You guys can, you know, game theory examples of where your pistol dots break or whatever. Well, your irons are still on your handgun if your pistol dot stops working, so it's not like you're without your irons. So I don't really want to debate that. If you're the guy that's like, I only run irons because irons are better than pistol dots, just understand you're in the minority. And if a dude is really good at the pistol dot, he's going to run circles around you when it comes to pistol proficiency, accuracy, speed, really everything. And I learned that lesson the hard way. I was an iron sights only guy until I started shooting with my cousin, who at the time was particularly a more superior shooter than I was. And he basically bullied me into getting a dot, and I've been off the races ever since. This was years ago. So get your pistol set up the way I just described. I prefer lights on pistols. Again, I don't want to debate should you have a light on your pistol or not. There's a reason why law enforcement carries lights on their pistols all the time. There's a reason why special operations guys do. You want to be able to identify something, especially when your handgun is out and you know you're in a situation where you're going to use it. If it's in the dark, you want to have a light attached to your firearm. There is also a need to have a handheld light. Again, kind of off topic. You guys are welcome to debate the uses of flashlights in you know, violent situations where you have to deploy a firearm in the comments. It's not really the point of this video. After you've got all that stuff sorted out, now we really need to focus on the training, right? So if you've got your, let's just say, Glock 19, maybe you picked up an old used gun or an LE trade-in, what you need to do is you need to dry fire like crazy. You can go to T-Rex Arms old videos where Lucas Botkin would put out these like how to train at indoor ranges and how to dry fire videos. Those are a phenomenal place to start, right? It's a great basic way to learn the functionality of the handgun and become really, really good with your kind of motor mechanics and run a gun subconsciously. Like your reloads, you don't think about it. Your trigger press, you don't think about it. You can just drill that over and over without firing a single round. Presentation of the handgun, the way it should always fall in front of your eye, all that kind of stuff is easily done with some videos and some time at your house. You can put a little piece of painter's tape on the wall and use that as a target and dry fire your handgun anytime you want. You know, you can dry fire 10 minutes a day, and after a couple weeks, I guarantee you're going to be significantly better shooter than you were, especially if you're new when you started. So that's the beginning of your training regimen. I would say after that, take a class from a reputable person who's teaching a combat handgun type of course. There are tons of them. Be careful. There are a lot of grifters out there that will teach you a bunch of stupid stuff or waste your money. There are forums out there that you can ask people about different classes. I'm not here to tell you who's good and who isn't, but if you shoot quite a bit and you train quite a bit, you'll start to notice, and you can probably make that decision on your own based on researching someone's school where they teach firearms competency and training classes. So that's step number 2. Get that training in. I would say step number 3, after you've taken a class or even before, sign up for a local pistol match. Doesn't matter if it's IDPA, doesn't matter if it's USPSA, whatever. Get out there and start competing. There's 2 reasons to do this. One, it's fun, more fun than shooting at the range by yourself or with 1 or 2 of your friends most of the time. And 2, it's oftentimes cheaper than a class and than renting a bay at an indoor range or an outdoor range. You can go get a ton of pistol work in fairly applicable scenarios that will stretch your skills. You get to shoot alongside and against guys that are going to be far better shooters than you. I have yet to win a match. I've come top 5 several times, but I've never walked out into a match and just smoked everybody. There's always someone to learn from who's better than me, and that's a really fun thing. Competing is always fun. You don't even have to compete to win. It's really to get better. So if you're not shooting pistol matches, even if it's only like 1 or 2 times a year, you're really doing yourself a disservice because it saves you money. It's a lot more fun. I highly recommend it. And just the fact that the stages that are set up, it's very hard without a ton of money and experience to set up your own stages and run them on your own, versus if you go to a match with like 50 people, You can shoot 5 stages. They're all set up. Watch other guys run the stages, learn new techniques, and get a lot of trigger time in there, especially because this community of competition shooters, we're all very helpful with each other. We want to try and help everybody get better. It's a very welcoming community. I went out in 2020 and shot my first match during all the COVID mess, and the only people out there in the real world in DFW at the time that were still doing community events without wearing masks and all that bull crap were competition shooters. And so I was shooting with a bunch of guys that were like, hey, be damned this government ordinance. We're going to go shoot these matches and stay prepared because we've got the BLM riots that have been happening. And like, there's no way I'm not going to stay fresh and stay warm with my pistol skills when the world is seemingly getting worse and worse every day. Obviously, a lot has changed since then. The world's a different place because of COVID, but that was the way I was kind of hazed into the community. I showed up with zero experience other than just being a Texas, former redneck that grew up in East Texas before I moved to Dallas. And I learned how to shoot a pistol in a match, and those skills directly translate to everything that I would want to know about using a pistol in a force-on-force situation, God forbid. It's not the whole equation, but it certainly is going to help you quite a bit. So if you're not shooting matches, you should be. And I want to really emphasize that. Classes and matches and dry fire. Do a ton of that. If you've done all that and you're in the process of doing all that, and you have food and you have water at your house in case of an emergency, like we get in just about every major city at some point in time. Here in Dallas, I've talked about this multiple times. In 2021, the power grid almost shut off semi-permanently due to a big snowstorm. We called it the snowpocalypse. My house was without power for 72 hours and the temperatures got down into negative digits at nighttime. I didn't have running water and my house ended up flooding whenever it got above 32 degrees. So I had to live in my house without running water and power for 3 days. At the time, I was lucky enough to, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, her family members had power so I could go stay over there. It woke me up to having water and food available and being able to cook or heat food without power and stay warm. I went and bought, not very much money, those types of things: food and water, space heaters, all that kind of stuff. So you should be doing that. After you've done that and you're prepared for an emergency, you can feed yourself, you can drink water without the city and without your well being able to provide it. You have a firearm, you're in decent shape, and you're competent with using it. Then I would say it makes logical sense to step into the category of the more fun stuff, like having a rifle, having body armor, having a plan to leave your house if you needed to, or to bug in. And that's all situationally dependent, although 90% of the time you should be staying in your home. That's your fortress. But if you live in like a super dense urban area, I definitely understand why you'd want to not be there if something bad happens. So that's kind of the logic that I use when we're talking about priorities of not only equipment, but skill set. Once you buy a rifle, you should have a chest rig or a war belt or both, or a plate carrier that you can carry magazines on. And then you can start doing things like taking rifle classes or shooting two-gun matches, which I love to do. I used to shoot a lot more. I haven't had enough time this year, but I spent most of my time with AR-15 training, practicing dry firing, practicing the range, learning my long distance and my holds, and then I would go apply that training to a two-gun match and compete. So I get to see other guys that are better than me, I get to see other guys that are worse than me, see how I stack up. All that stuff is super fun, and again, it's cheaper than going and renting a bay at a range, and significantly more fun, right? Your biggest expense by far in those situations is not just the equipment, but the ammunition, which you're going to be spending on anyway. So all that stuff is awesome. That is what I would like to tell people whenever they ask me, hey man, like, should I buy an AR-15? Well, do you have a handgun that you're proficient with? Do you carry it every day? Do you have a tourniquet that in medical training enough to stop a bleed? If you're putting holes in someone, you need to be able to plug holes, right? Whether they're on your own body or a bystander, or even the guy that you might have recently shot. There's some weird situations where you might need to tourniquet somebody else who actually was the aggressor. Not likely, but it can happen. You know how to do it. After that, you need to make sure that you're training really well with the handgun, take the classes, and go compete whenever you have time. I understand funds are limited, and so is time, especially if you're a family man. I get it. I have a wife who's pregnant, and it takes a whole lot of time between doctor's visits, preparing to have a nursery, my work, and just interaction with family on holidays. I don't have a ton of time to train anymore, but I can dry fire when I catch 10, 20 minutes to myself. So keep all that in mind. Then buy your preparedness stuff: food, water, heat, all that kind of stuff. There's millions of videos online for, you can take that rabbit hole as far as you want to, or you can be pretty minimalist. I personally am on the minimalist side because I live in a suburb. If I had to stay here, I can live with not a whole lot. When I have my daughter, I'm sure I'll be thinking more about creature comforts and things for her if something went wrong, right? So that's just, you can take that rabbit hole preparedness as far down as you want to, as far as you need to be comfortable with the stuff that you have and knowing how to use it. Then finally, buy a rifle. The same rules about training and competing apply to the rifle as they do with the pistol. You're way less likely to deploy a rifle than you are to deploy a pistol. The pistol is the primary weapon of an American citizen until otherwise, until things change and make that not the case. And if it's foolish to not have a rifle slung up when you leave your house, man, we're in like a pretty bad situation. I think it would take a lot to come to that point, but the point is you can be prepared for that. Just don't start with that because that's less likely. I've used it as an example in other videos, the Hurricane Katrina disaster. If I was foolish enough to live in New Orleans that close to, I say foolish, that's not fair. People are from New Orleans, I get it. You should, be proud of where you come from, but you guys get it. Practically speaking, that stuff happens like Hurricane Katrina fairly often over there in New Orleans. And if I was in New Orleans during that time, and I wasn't a young kid, I would have felt super unprepared if I didn't have proficiency with my handgun and wasn't carrying it around, because it was pretty dang lawless for a significant amount of time. Not to mention not having food and water to tide me over while all that crap was going on down there. So I'm sure if anyone in the comment section lived through that, I'd love to hear your story. But I like to use the hurricane in New Orleans and the hurricane in North Carolina as prime examples of why you should be prepared. That applies to the ability to use your pistol in a violent manner to stop bad people from doing bad things. That also applies to your ability to have not only the mindset, but the resources to feed yourself and your family and your neighbors. That is the order of things I think you should purchase and focus on getting good with. Beyond that, you start getting into stuff like precision rifles, you get into stuff like night vision, and those are our discussions for another day. But I hope this is helpful for you guys. I wish that before today I had kind of communicated this concisely to a bunch of guys that are constantly asking me about what to buy and when. Hopefully you can use this video as at least some inspiration as where to get started. What I'm saying is by no means the gospel of how to exactly do this. There are 10,000 different ways you can prioritize gear and training. I am pretty sure though that it makes the most logical sense to train with your handgun and then go from there. Because if you can't do that, then you can't defend any of the resources you already have. You're also not competent and you could hurt someone you don't mean to be hurting with a firearm. They are dangerous tools. They're designed to take life. Don't take that lightly. So anyway, I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. I really appreciate all of you who watch my videos. It seems like my little tiny YouTube channel is somehow getting more views than it ever has before, and I greatly appreciate it. I enjoy doing these little discussions, interacting with you guys in the comments. So please give it a like and a subscribe if you like interacting with me or just hearing what I have to say. Most of my videos are based on what strangers from my comment section or people that I know in my day-to-day life and what they ask me or what their ideas are, and then I like to take that and discuss it so that we can all learn more. Always be learning. Don't think that you know everything, because you don't. You can always be learning something new, even from someone who may know less than you. So there's always good advice to be had all over the world. So thank you so much for your time. God bless. Have a Merry Christmas.